Welcome to the podcast Wake Up Humans with Steve Judson. Now a special Wake Up Humans. Steve Judson talks with Dr. Amlinger.
All right, man, I'm excited. This is our first Wake Up Humans, I don't want to say interview, but discussion or conversation. So I don't know what kind of noise is going to happen in the background. I don't care. But I'm with one of my soulmates, Dr. Peter Amlinger. And for those of you guys that have been to the office, we have a quote over table 1, which hundreds of you have taken pictures of. If you want to get to where you want to go, you have to let go of where you are. And this is this guy. So what a better way to introduce, well, say hi, Peter.
Hello, everybody, and thanks for having me, Steve. And I love telling them. In fact, we have a quote up in our office right now, which basically says the same thing. But I think it says if you want God to open the door, you got to let go of the doorknob. And I joke with my patients saying, there's a quote in an office in Connecticut. We're in Toronto, Ontario right now. There's a quote in an office in Connecticut that basically says the same thing, and my name's under it, but it's not good enough to make the wall in my office because my wife chose this one instead. But that's what it's all about, man. It's like the wake of the boat has no influence over the future direction of the boat, so you got to let go of your past and get focused on your vision and then just let innate take you there.
Yeah, you see, man, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, is why this guy is our first person that we're going to do a discussion with. I've known Peter. How long have we known each other?
Well, it's got to be like 03, 02-ish, where we really connected at a DE, I think. That's when did life have its little...
Yeah, probably 2002.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think you only had 2 kids when we met.
Wow. And, it's, God sends certain people into your life at the right time that are going to help propel you. And, Peter's been there for me through marital stuff, through kids stuff, through health stuff, through practice stuff. One of the benefits I have with him is he's a lot older than me. And I
look younger. I'm faster.
He's getting ready to prepare for his black belt in Taekwondo. The guy's almost 60 years old, so it's amazing. But the ultimate intention of this podcast for me is to instill knowledge and to open the lay people's hearts as to this principle we talk about. Peter and I have spoken literally around the world together. I'm in Canada right now as we speak. In Toronto, I'm actually sitting on his bed talking to him. And, it's time to bring this message to the people, to get people like Peter in front of you guys, because we travel talking to chiropractors all the time. But it's like, what about the people, Pete? Yeah,
well, it's interesting. I've been doing chiropractic. I've been a chiropractor for 34 and a half years. And, I'm at a point in my life now, and I speak a lot like you do, and I'm not one to post every Friday on Facebook where I happen to be going that weekend, because it just makes me miss my wife more. Yeah. But I had a distinction a long time ago that I used to think when I started speaking that I was doing it for the chiropractors, and I'm not. I'm doing it for humanity, because it's. Humanity needs to understand our why, and a lot of people think chiropractic's all about the adjustment,
right? And
it's not, right? The adjustment is a tool we use to connect people to our why, and the why is the magnificence of the power that built you and that runs you and that recreates you cell by cell, year after year after year, and that power ultimately guides your life, right? It's your friend within, it's your inner knower, I think it's bigger than your intuition, and it's that gut feeling, and so people need to understand that we're supposed to feel our way through life, and that it's our neurology, it's our nervous system that connects us to this space within ourselves that knows that it knows that it knows what we're supposed to do in any given situation. So in chiropractic, we call it our innate intelligence, and I call it our consciousness or our awareness, and that is connected to the higher power, which we call universal intelligence. So the why behind an adjustment isn't to make your headache go away or your stomach feel better or your back to feel better. It's to connect you to that power fully, without interference. And you know, part of the job of our innate intelligence is to discern messages coming from universal intelligence, from the Creator, that are intended for you specifically, and it's each of our responsibilities to get quiet within ourselves and trust that above, down, inside out flow, and to live our life according to that guidance, and ultimately nothing else.
It's powerful. Now, you know, it's funny because knowing you and hearing what you have to say, which is like powerful. For the layperson listening right now, they're just, you know, they're going to look up to you and say, wow, this guy's amazing. He kicks ass. It's like, it's wisdom, right? But you always like that. You know, like I know your story, but to share who you were before you decided this path.
Well, so, you know, I can honestly say I no longer remember not being like that, but I remember when it changed. And right. And it changed in 11th grade, at the end of 11th grade for me, and I was literally at a fork in the road, and I was hanging around the wrong crowd, and I was hanging out with the wrong crowd, and I found myself in a circumstance, and I remember vividly, because I sit with it every morning when I wake up, and I was sitting in an office waiting for the outcome of a meeting, and I was just that kid. I was just a punk ass kid doing stupid shit, and literally on the wrong path and at a fork in the road, and I read the definition of chiropractic, and something inside me said, "This is what you're supposed to do with the rest of your life."
Right.
And I said, "Okay." And there's a famous story in chiropractic called the story of that something. And B.J. Palmer woke up to his why and his big vision, and he said, "I will," to the voice within, and I happened to say, "Okay." And in that instant, my life changed. I started to see the world differently. I started to behave differently. I knew what I was supposed to do with my life, which was be a chiropractor. And I didn't know what a chiropractor was. I didn't know what chiropractic was. I didn't know what the principle was, but I knew I was going to be one. And I from that day forward, I just started to be different, and be inner guided, and happened to have a football coach at the time who was very big on goal setting and being inner guided, and so plugged into his wisdom and his mentorship, and I've never really looked back from that day.
One of the things I've noticed after, you know, meeting people, and you know, you go to conferences and you speak, and there's like professional speakers, presenters, and they'll do their PowerPoint, and at the end there's a close and a sell, and then there's always those couple people plugged in that are speaking from the heart, from within. And what I've noticed with the majority, if not all of them, they had a past. They had a past where that was rocky, it was a little rough. And then there was that aha moment, which it sounds like what you're talking about. What do you think that thing is?
That's a great question, and a great distinction that you've made. And I think that, so if you go to our chiropractic philosophy, it says that our principle, universal intelligence and innate intelligence, are infinite. It's our perception of them that's limited, and we can only expand our awareness of them through experience. And so if you haven't had some experience, living disconnected, like really disconnected. And I know you've been there. If you haven't had that experience, you don't really value what it means to be connected.
Right.
And so I think that's point one, is just to have some experience. It's like, if anybody tells you, if anyone tells you and paints a story that they live this life where the river of life is just flowing beautifully, and there's no waves on the river of life, and there's no resistance, and they're bullshitting you.
Right.
You're like, really, and because the river of life has everything in it. It's got smooth slicks where big trout are raising the small flies, and it's got class 5 whitewater, and each of our rivers will have that, and it's that whitewater that challenges your faith, and that tests you, and sometimes that whitewater looks like, drinking too much, or living under a bridge, or doing drugs, or fighting, or marital discord, or whatever it might be. And so that's where you find yourself. You don't, I coach hockey for a lot of years. I always told my players, we'll learn more from our losses than we will from our wins. So we will learn more from the adversity in our life than we will learn from the times where the river was flowing smoothly. And that's just a time where we should be grateful that it's flowing smoothly. But, that's where you want to check the hull of your canoe for cracks and shit like that. Get ready for the next set of rapids.
Little preparation.
So I think it's just having that, and then having the distinction of living connected versus living disconnected. And then there's this piece about just surrendering. I think there's a point in your life where I think you've probably been there. I know I have, where there's times where I fought the will of God in my life and just resisted it, right? And then finally I just surrendered and said, "You win, God, you win. I'm yours."
Right.
I know you created me for a purpose. Pardon me. I know you've blessed me with certain gifts, and I surrender to your plan, and I surrender to discovering what my gifts are and developing them through hard work, and I surrender to letting go of those old stories that don't grow corn anymore, that don't serve me and your purpose and vision for my life. And so I think it's a marriage of those two things, having the experience and realizing that living this ego-driven life, or this could be ego-driven, could be overly educated, trying to think your way through everything. It could be trying to control everything. But you just get to a point where saying, you know what, could be trying to escape, but you just get to a point, it's like, this isn't working for me. I give up. I surrender. Right. It's yours, right? And so I think we all get to that point where we just hand it over and start to trust, and then it's like a muscle. The more you trust that above, down, inside out way of life, the more you trust your innate, it just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And your connection, your awareness of it's not your connection, because if you weren't connected to it, you'd be dead, right? So it's like, it's your awareness of it and your willingness to just trust it and act on it. And so, over the years, the gap between me hearing it, trusting it, and acting on it has just gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. There was, at first it was sometimes a bit of a wrestling match, and now it's just proven itself too many times for me now, so that so this time and space between me getting the message and me acting on it has become very, very short.
Right. It's you're talking about God.
Yeah.
You're talking about faith, and right now, when my perception of society is they're uncomfortable talking about God. And if someone's in a place of anger, or they're mad at God in their life, and they don't believe, they don't have trust, what role does this role of faith and play in healing and moving forward for these people?
Well, to preface that, I think one of the best bits of advice and wisdom that I ever received was from a native elder who said, "Don't take anything I give you at face value.
Right.
Go out and test it for yourself and prove it or disprove it." And so I would, so I've taken the principles of chiropractic and I said, I'm going to go out and prove them or disprove them. And I don't care which way it goes. I just need to do that. And they've over and over and over and over and over again proven self true. So, I then at one point in my life said, okay, God, prove to me that you exist. Literally, and he did. And he keeps proving it. And so that morphed into I'm just going to now that I've got this baseline proof, I'm going to challenge myself to see the presence of God everywhere.
How does God prove he exists to you, to an individual?
So again, it goes back to that quote from our philosophy, is that the principle, God is infinite. It's our perception of him that's limited. We can only expand our awareness of the presence through experience. And so some of it was looking back on my life retrospectively, saying, you know what? That was going on. And it was when I just paused and got quiet that something shifted. And so I look back and say, even though it was shitty when I was going through it, what I learned or what happened as a result of that experience brought me to here. And so I can see that there's a divine design unfolding. And so, and I've had visions, and I recall a time where I was really disconnected, and I had an experience standing in the middle of a trout stream, hanging up my cell phone after taking a phone call from a patient. And the message I got was simply, well, I got to frame the story up. It was the opening day of trout season, happened to correspond with the last day of our tax season in Canada, and I hadn't had my taxes settled yet. So I was driving up to my favorite trout stream. It was like an hour and a 20-minute drive from my house, and I left my house. It was 22 degrees Celsius, which would be like 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Beautiful day. Thinking this is going to be a great opening day. It's a Tuesday. I always wait till the Tuesday so my stream's empty. And I'm driving up and I'm phoning my office manager and my accountant. We're trying to get the tax shit sorted out, and I'm a little bit, distracted by that. And then I get another phone call about something. And then as I'm going up, a cold front comes in and the temperature just drops dramatically. I get to my trout stream. I'm all in my head about my taxes. I'm on a time crunch. It is now snowing. And I'm like, shit. And I then pull into the stream and there's a car there. And I'm like, I've fished this stream every day of my life since I'm 16 years old, or every opening day of my trout season since I'm 16. And there's somebody on my stream. This is not okay. I want to control it. So I string up my fly rod, put my waders on. I walk down to the hole that I have started my trout season on for like 25 years. And there's a frickin' somebody standing in my hole. And they're worm fishing. And I'm a fly fisherman. I'm like, this is like bullshit.
Is that an amateur?
It's like, it's not really fishing, right? So I go to a different hole and I put my first cast 20 feet up a tree, and I'm like, and break my fly off, and I go past the guy, and it's cold and it's snowing and it's windy, and I'm not seeing any insects moving. I'm not seeing any trout, and I'm just getting more frustrated and pissed by the moment. And I'm walking down the stream, and all of a sudden my cell phone rings. And this is back in the day when cell phones were the size of a Kleenex box, and I had to bring mine because I didn't have a watch, and I needed to be back in the city for an event that night. So I answer the phone, and it's a patient, and she's like 38 weeks pregnant. And I'm like, she's like, I'm really sorry to bother you. I'm like, it's no bother, because the fishing's shitty, and there's a worm fisherman. I go through it, and I'm in my pity party. And
she cared, being 38 weeks pregnant.
She did not care, but she did care, actually. She was a better chiropractor than I was that day. So she was having some concerning symptoms, and she said, I thought I could go to the hospital, but, they'll flip out. or I could just phone you and you'll just know if it's okay or not. So if you don't think it's okay, I'll go get checked out. If you think it's okay, then I'll wait and I'll see you tomorrow morning. And so we talk. I'm like, I feel like it's okay. She goes, okay, great, and she's just one of these, like, she just always had a smile on her face. Right? I remember signing her passport application. She had to go get her picture taken 3 times because you're not allowed to show your teeth, and she just had a perma smile on her face. She's like, well, I'm going to send you some positive energy, and you're going to start catching fish. And I'm like, I'm still there. I'm like, yeah, bullshit. It's not. Anyway, hung up the phone. I turned to my right and looked downstream, and 30 feet downstream, a trout jumps. And I stood there in the middle of the stream, and I heard a voice as clear as day that said, Peter, you're not always with me, but I'm always with you. And I went, wow. And I stood in the middle of that trout stream for like 10 minutes, bawling my eyes out.
Was that voice the other fisherman talking to you?
No, he was gone. That was God. It was an inner voice, but it was from above. And he said, you're not always with me, but I'm always with you. And I just realized at that time, and it was a relearning moment, a resurrendering moment, that if God seems far, who turned? It's never him, it's us. Mm-hmm. And so I went and I turned and I resurrendered my life to the Lord that day, and had a good cry. And then I went down and I caught that trout, and I caught a bunch more trout after that, actually. And really, since that day, which was well over 20 years ago, I've never left that space, and the Lord has always been with me. I've always been aware of the presence of the divine, just a divine presence. That I love the native term for it. Just I've always been aware of the spirit that moves through all things and that connects us all together.
Right.
And the more I surrender to it, the more it reveals itself to me. So it's proven that statement in our chiropractic philosophy books that it's unlimited, it's infinite, it's our perception of it and our awareness of it that's limited, and we can only increase it through experience.
It's funny because we were at this conference just today, and they were talking about the major premise, and it's one of our 33 principles, one of our covenants in chiropractic of principles we follow within our philosophy. And principle number 1 is that there's universal intelligence in all matter. And one of the gentlemen was talking about how that may confuse people because it's alluding to God, right? And people will shut off mentally when they hear that because they don't associate with God. And what I found with thousands of people I've had discussions with is they're going through tough times and stressors in life, and then how God will all of a sudden speak to you.
Yep.
And that's like that aha moment, which like you just alluded to that you had, which is him speaking through you.
Yeah. And which is when we line it up with our chiropractic philosophy of a universal intelligence, which is God. And then we have a subunit of that intelligence within us, which is called innate intelligence. So innate is simply, the way I look at it, it's the receiving set within me that God built within me so he can speak down and through me. And so it's just about being dialed in. And I'm old enough, you're old enough too, to remember the radio sets with the dials where you had to tune the station, or the TVs with the rabbit ears where you had to adjust them to get rid of the static. And that's really what it's all about.
Well, we talk about dialed in, right?
Yeah.
And that right away makes me think of the Atlas.
Yeah. And we're just, so all we're doing is removing static from that connection. So will your physiology run better if there's no static in the nervous system? Absolutely. Will you be more adaptable? Absolutely. Will your body heal better? Absolutely. Will you be able to discern the divine purpose for your life when there's no static? You'll be absolutely. It'll just become crystal clear to you. And
what happens to the person that's walking around with a subluxated atlas? Can they be fully dialed in?
I don't believe so. And in my experience, I would say no. And I've had the privilege of adjusting a bunch of people who thought they were dialed in, and once we clear their atlas out, they just find a whole new level.
Right.
And that manifests different. Some people said I thought it was dialed in. I was actually just unaware, and I was believing a line of bullshit that I was feeding myself.
Stay tuned for more conversation with Steve Judson and Dr. Amlinger.
You've been listening to Wake Up Humans with Steve Judson. To get Steve's books, Wake Up Humans and Atlas Adjusted, just visit Amazon. The Wake Up Humans podcast is a copyright of Steve Judson. Be sure to look up other episodes. Wake Up Humans will educate, inspire, and bring you clarity. Thanks for listening to Wake Up Humans with Steve Judson. Visit wakeuphumans.org.